Hello and good evening, and thank you for joining our webinar where you'll discover more about the defence industry and the career opportunities available. Before we begin, it's important that we acknowledge that the land that I'm standing on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to their spiritual relationship with their country. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land across Australia on which we now meet. I pay respects to Aboriginal elders past and present, and to Aboriginal elders emerging. My name is Nikki Salerno, and I work as part of a broad team within Defence SA who have a mission to inspire, educate and drive potential candidates to a lifelong career within Australia's defence industry. In terms of housekeeping, there's no need to silence your phones or put on pants for that matter. We're not able to hear or see you during the session. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions which will be answered at the end of the session. Questions can be asked using the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar platform. Just select the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type in your question. You can do this at any time during the webinar, and I encourage you to submit your question as soon as it pops into your head to ensure you don't forget to ask it later. If we're not able to get to all of the questions today, we'll endeavour to respond offline. You're welcome to email us at the end of the session if you'd like more information, or you can visit findyourplacesa.com where you might find the answers you are looking for. Tonight, you'll be hearing from 4 highly skilled and experienced experts who will not only share their own pathways, but talk through current and emerging career opportunities within the various sectors that make up the defence industry. We'll also get a rundown on some of the specialised study options you could consider to put you on track to a lifelong career in an industry that continues to grow. To get you thinking, please watch the following short video to provide insight into what the defence industry is and the huge range of opportunities that exist now and will emerge in the future.
Did you know there's a thriving defence industry in Adelaide that supports the delivery of major defence projects? You don't have to work in the Army, Navy or Air Force to be part of the action, but you can still be part of an industry that contributes to the safety of our nation. In fact, many of the world's leading defence companies call Adelaide home. It's here that they design, manufacture and maintain the hardware and technologies for some of the largest projects in Australia's history. This means that there are amazing opportunities for you to have a rewarding career in this dynamic and innovative industry. A career for life. With career opportunities that range from engineering to design, HR to finance, IT, project management, quality control, logistics, digital specialists and trades, there is no limit to where your skills can take you. There's a place for you in the defence industry, and now's the time to claim it. Discover your career at findyourplacesa.com.
It is now a pleasure for me to introduce you to our first guest speaker of this evening, Darren Lovett. He's a Director of Space at the South Australian Space Industry Centre. Darren is going to share his insights to all that is happening in the very exciting space sector and the career opportunities current and emerging within South Australia. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, hi, Nikki. Thanks very much. One of the things I was asked to do tonight is just talk about my space journey. And we just saw a video that showed that you don't have to be in defence to be in the defence industry. And I have been in defence, but I'm also now working for industry. And I've been very fortunate because I've seen what Australia did in the 60s out at Woomera, in the desert, just north of Adelaide. And I've also been fortunate to see what we've been doing with programs such as JAXA, the return of Hayabusa in both 2010 and 2020, a satellite that came back from an asteroid and returned back to Woomera in Adelaide. And then finally, I've had an opportunity to see overseas what's happening in space. So I've been very fortunate, and I think we can really make it happen here in South Australia. Do you want to just continue on, Nikki? I'll keep going.
No, keep going, Darren. Yes.
Yeah, great. Well, where's South Australia's space journey going? Well, I mentioned we had Woomera in 1967, and a lot of people point to Woomera and say, this is what Australia could be doing. And this really represents a sort of an old view of space, really large rockets, heavy lift, massive consortiums of countries. And it's not really where we're looking at for Australia now. Just look back to last year, 19th of September, we had the first suborbital launch of a space-capable rocket from just north of Ceduna in Kaniba in South Australia. And this really represents the new regime of space, talking about small rockets with small payloads that can do massively powerful things due to technology. Just more recently, we had Hayabusa come back end of last year, returning to the desert, and Adelaide Uni running Rover Challenge. So taking a challenge that was typically done in the US with NASA and bringing it back to South Australia, where we're now running robotic competitions on behalf of the nation and doing it out of Adelaide. And then even more recently, we had the Australian Space Forum with people like Nikki really working hard to make that thing a success. And 7 years ago, only about 60 people attending, with the most recent Space Forum, the 11th Space Forum, having over 700 actual attendees with 1,100 registrations and people attending from over the world. So we've really built a space concept in South Australia. Where's it going? Well, we have a vision. We released a space strategy end of last year. And if you're a student out there looking for potential, I'd really recommend you look at our website and have a look at that strategy, because it talks about where we want to focus. And we're talking about building the entire vertical supply chain. So that means space componentry, designing it in-house in Adelaide or South Australia, building those components, reaction wheels, sensors, putting them into a cube satellite or a larger satellite, putting it on a rocket and launching it into space, and then operating that satellite from South Australia so that we can get the data, the imagery, the information back to South Australia so we can make use of it on the ground here. That's our vision, and that's what we're doing. We have a program called SASAT that we're going to be, I'll talk about briefly. But in terms of the jobs that we're looking, I just want to make reference to Steve Jobs when he released the iPad 2. He said it's not just the technology that makes everything work. It's the technology married with the liberal arts, married with the humanities that makes our heart sings. So what do I mean by that? We need a broad ecosystem of skill sets. We need technologists, especially in the STEM fields, but we also need people who understand business, finance, risk and insurance, the law, and how to move fuels and how to license things. So we're really looking for quite a complex ecosystem to fill into the space sector. And how are we going to do it? We're going to inspire the next generation with programs like SASAT. If you're at school, look up this program, SASAT 1. We've got a competition to name that satellite, but South Australia will be designing its own satellite and putting it up into space so that we can start making use of that information. And this really is a stepping stone to pave the way for those future jobs and lead our industry to create export opportunities so that you can come into the sector and hopefully work from there. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is just what are the opportunities that are available for you. So going from school, we've already got the SASAT 1 Space Services Mission Program I talked about. This program, just today I had a meeting with both schools, Department of Education, some of our companies, Myriota and the SmartSat Cooperative Research Centre, to spin this program out into schools starting in year 10 to 12, so that we can do science missions, start measuring things on the ground using Internet of Things or taking photos of crops, but then bringing it out further and moving it further down the school chain so that younger kids can pick it up. We have a few other programs in the state worth mentioning. If you're a student leaving year 12 or going through university now, or even a mature age student, I recommend you look at the Southern Hemisphere Space Studies Program. That is a world-class program in a partnership with the International Space University run out of Strasbourg, France. It's run in the summer holidays here in Adelaide. It's the only one like it in the Southern Hemisphere, and we offer scholarships to that program as well. We also have a Passport Scholarships Work Experience Program so that you can access that through the Advanced Technology Program or ATP, and we put students into programs like Myriota or the CRC to get work experience there. And then finally, three other concepts that we can talk about. Acting Space. This is a competition that's run every year that goes global. Look for that in UniSA towards the end of the year. But we also have something called the Venture Catalyst Space. So if you're a startup company, we have funding available to help you grow into that community. I've mentioned Rover Challenge, which is a great competition to look into if you're into robotics or the business side. And then finally, the Space Discovery Centre, which only opened recently in the bottom of the Space Agency building on Lot 14, has a fantastic sort of Questacon feel to it. It shows adults from age 14 up to 24, what they can do in terms of careers in space. And that's a hands-on world-class facility again, right here in Adelaide. It's just open. Go to the website and you can lock yourself in and go have a tour. So lots happening in Adelaide, and I think we're well on the way to making this a future success. Hi, Nikki, you're on pause. Mute. I think someone's muted Nikki. Mads?
Sorry about that. What's a webinar without someone forgetting to turn off their mute function? Thank you, Darren. That was excellent. And I find it fascinating, just the thought that we can be making these components here down on Earth and sending them into space, and you know, the incredible things that they'll be doing for us, up in space in the future. You mentioned the Space Discovery Centre, and I've been lucky enough to visit the Space Discovery Centre myself and see some of those components that are in space. And you know, if you're not in South Australia and you're planning a trip down here, I highly recommend that you include a visit on your travel itinerary. I suppose then, leading on to our next speaker, we have Paula Oliver, who is the manager of AustCyber's South Australian node. Paula is going to walk us through the critical field of cybersecurity, looking at its importance now into the future, career opportunities in the sector, and the pathways, skill sets and qualifications that will be advantageous for young people looking to move into the field. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and participate in this webinar today. So thank you very much. So one of the first things I've been asked to speak about is really to explain what my career pathway was into cyber and why cyber was the choice I made. Really, it comes down to my pathway wasn't really even a pathway. I think anybody in my age bracket would probably agree that pathways into cyber didn't exist at that time, and to a certain extent are still emerging at this point in time also. I had a very diverse route into cybersecurity. So I actually emerged out of university having taken English literature and theatre, heading onto a teaching pathway, but then took a different route to end up working in a family law firm in the UK as a secretary, but was tapped on the shoulder to do their ICT work and became their internal sort of software developer for their case management system. And that was where I first sort of got my introduction to ICT, and where I started to first sort of encounter what information security really was all about. And then I moved over to Australia and began working in ICT here, transferred those skills with me, and led a service desk out of state government, having a variety of roles within state government. I then transitioned sideways into a cybersecurity and risk area, which was really about rounding off my skills, but was very new to me. And actually, prior to going into that role, I was very much averse to cybersecurity. So I guess I could be considered a bit of a cyber convert now, because it's now a passion. But I used to perceive cyber as something that was, you know, the barrier that, you know, if you wanted to get here, you had to do X, Y, Z, and the whole rest of the alphabet in order to be able to achieve it. So I'm certainly converted now as I learned more about cyber and the risks that are posed if we don't address them. I really did open my eyes to what it was all about. I worked in the operational space in cybersecurity within the Office for Cyber in DPC, having done things such as risk assessments, implementing information security management programs, better governance and assurance work, And then I transitioned into the role I'm in today, which is the node manager for AustCyber, which was operationalised in 2018 as part of the National Growth Centre initiative. So I've had a very, very diverse pathway, and as I said, many other people would find it diverse if they're in my age bracket. But cyber now is that area that is so critically growing at such a pace. The demand for cyber people is huge, and so that's probably what's lending me to staying in it, along with recognizing the importance of it. So I guess moving on to the next aspect about, well, why is cyber crucial? Delving into that a little bit more. Why do we need to pay a bit more attention to cyber security? Well, I guess we only need to look at the newspapers and the reports on TV to understand that cybersecurity is now becoming a daily occurrence. We've got, you know, endless data breaches and hacks that are really escalating in sophistication and impact. You know, we've got a digital world. COVID has made sure that has rapidly evolved quicker than we probably planned, being, you know, everything being online now as much as possible, and a lot of remote working. And that has brought about the need to be able to protect it even more so. So protecting what we do online now is so much more important. And what that really emphasizes is that all parts of our economy with this digitalization are now at risk if we don't do something about cybersecurity. So we need cybersecurity products, and we need cybersecurity services, and we need cybersecurity skills and people to be able to manage the risks that are posed. So cyber's become not only a sector in its own right, but it's rapidly moving towards being that enabler across all other sectors to provide trust and confidence in our digitally enabled world. So it's the horizontal and it's the vertical as well. And the reason, you know, it can be considered the enabler is because what cyber does is it really brings about digital trust. It supports that economic stability and that economic growth. Everything that we have, our digital infrastructure in Australia and the data that it carries really are core to the value of the growth of our nation ultimately. And so digital trust and cybersecurity in that role plays a really key part in being able to attract investment to Australia and to drive jobs growth here too. So cyber as that horizontal is enabling that growth and those opportunities across all those other sectors, and providing that resilience and capability for Australia to be sort of seen as that trusted place, I guess, to not only live, but to work and do business with. If you haven't had a look at it, I would highly recommend taking a quick look at this report which AustCyber published in 2020. It was the Digital Trust Report. I'll share a link perhaps in the chat channel after this, but that really articulated the role of digital trust and cybersecurity really well as being a foundational sort of pillar of our economy. And it did a really interesting case study. It modelled what a 4-week digital disruption would look like for our economy. And that was astounding, actually. It really brought home some very sobering statistics. So it articulated a hypothetical widespread cyber attack that, if lasting only 4 weeks, would cost the economy over $30 billion. Now that's huge, it's significant, and that's, you know, the equivalent of around 3/4 of our national defence budget annually. So creating resilience in our sectors, and particularly in our defence sector, is really crucial. So cyber has a really big role to play. And why it's so important to our defence industry, well, I think, you know, as I just said, it's a critical sector. So digital trust and having that confidence in our capabilities and our technologies, cyber brings that. So being able to have, you know, strong confidence that our servicemen and our servicewomen are using systems and tools that are, you know, highly sophisticated, highly secured. They've been secured in not only the design, but they've been put through rigorous testing, understanding that the data within those systems and the way those systems operate, you know, it can't be compromised, gives them that extra level of confidence. And that is so important for our nation's capability as well. For South Australia, for the node that I work in here, we have defence sector and its supply chain as one of our key priority areas. So South Australia has over $90 billion worth of defence contracts, and that brings about a very high demand for suppliers into the defence sector. SA is largely built on large volumes of small businesses, many of which are in that supply chain. So there's more and more businesses specialising in things like defence manufacturing that are emerging now. And it's so critical now that we are able to ensure that they have security at the heart of what they do, to make sure that supply chain is secure and robust and trusted, essentially. So having that really strong cybersecurity sector to underpin it is the future, really the future success of our defence sector and all other industries that will contribute towards our economy. So cyber and defence, they're really critical for one another and for everybody. So in terms of what would be the career opportunities now and in the future, well, there's huge career opportunities, particularly in the defence sector, as I've just mentioned, with that growing supply chain and demand. Our workforce is about 33,500 people by about 2024. So around 7,000 workers are going to need training in cybersecurity over the next 4 years. So that is a really high demand and quite a high target to meet. And that skill shortage is being caused by that strong industry performance, that demand that is growing, the need for higher cybersecurity functions and people on ground in Australia. We're seeing a lot of activity coming from our TAFEs and universities around, them mobilising to address that skills gap. And we've got, a lot of universities now offering very dedicated and very specific courses in cybersecurity with degrees and masters, for example. And we've got even now in state 3 cybersecurity traineeships on offer. So we have one with state government, and we have one with industry, and we also have a school-based cybersecurity traineeship, and they are utilising a certificate 4 in cybersecurity. And so just through those 3 traineeships emerging and the certificate 4 coming into play, we can see that is really fast moving to be able to address that skills gap. We're really seeing a lot of not unusual, but very niche areas of training coming out as well that relate to cybersecurity. So we're finding that, we're addressing cyber in the general sense, but we're also getting training and qualifications emerging that are really niche and for those sort of specialised areas for the cybersecurity industry as well. And an interesting bit of insight into what the earning capacity can be. The expected salaries in the sector for cybersecurity are quite high, just like the demand for the workers. So an average cyber salary is sitting around $112,000 per year. And the types of roles that are available within cybersecurity are so broad. I would really encourage everyone, if they haven't already seen it, to have a look at the NIST NICE framework. So that's the framework for cybersecurity industry. It is an American framework, but it is widely used and adopted here in Australia. So the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Workforce, or NICE framework, has the most detailed breakdown of cybersecurity work roles that exist. So it breaks it down into 7 categories, some speciality areas, and then into 52 individually identified work roles within cybersecurity. It also breaks down sort of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that sit within those roles. And that's a really great resource for understanding just how broad the opportunities are. And if we think about how our lives are now digital, we're going to need more than those people who are technical. We need those people who can communicate. We need the people who can train. We need people who can articulate the business risk. We also will need lawyers to navigate the ever increasing legislation and regulation that is coming into play within cybersecurity as well. So there is a very diverse set of roles available for people to explore. And diversity in people is really important with cybersecurity. We need to be able to have a really broad and diverse way of thinking in terms of how we can understand perhaps our adversaries. So being able to have a variety of ways that we can address problems and different ways of thinking is really crucial to be able to stay one step ahead. Cyber actually released a interactive dashboard for being able to explore those different types of training offerings that are in the country that are mapped against that NICE framework and all of those roles. And South Australia Node, we released a report last year which really explored the South Australian specific skills offerings in state mapped against that NICE framework. So I would encourage everyone to have a quick look at offcyber.com later on after this and have a look at those interactive dashboards. In terms of what career pathways are actually available for people that are looking to get a career in cyber right now, as I mentioned, there's lots of work being done in that academic sector and education sectors to grow the training. But there is a number of rising cyber-specific programs that are emerging as well. And it's really vital that we encourage strong interest from school age students to be able to get them understanding the needs of cybersecurity now before they go on to make their career choices. So as I mentioned before, we've got the cybersecurity traineeships. We are working with the State Department of Education in looking at how they will release their cybersecurity flexible industry pathways, which will really feature a lot of industry immersion activities and opportunities to learn and understand the diversity of opportunity within cybersecurity. We're also looking at how we can equip the teachers with professional development training that should really be in place as well, not only for students, but for teachers to make sure that we're delivering a high standard and high quality of teaching for cybersecurity too. So there's lots happening. We've got lots of vocational training pathways, as I just mentioned, with the traineeships. We've got that growing number of courses that are available through our universities as well. Then there's a lot of emerging micro-credentials and qualifications that are coming up. There's also things specifically in the defence space, such as the ADF Cyber Gap program. If you haven't had a look at that, I'll also share a link after this to the program. That's a great initiative with the Defence Force to offer the opportunity for someone to have training in cybersecurity, to experience a work placement within an area of defence as well, and to have some of their fees paid for them. So I would genuinely encourage people to take a look at that as well. South Australia also has quite a strong community of practice around supporting our student cohorts. So we have mentoring available for our cybersecurity students in state. So we have an SA Cyber Edition mentoring program. And we also run some free sessions, some free study sessions for our cybersecurity students in state as well, where they can network, learn a bit about each other's courses, support one another, and also learn from industry who come along and support them, answer questions and help navigate, sort of those career decisions that they might have to make. So I think that's probably summarised everything I wanted to cover. So I might hand back to you, Nikki.
Great, thank you, Paula. That was a very, very insightful insight into the cyber industry in Australia and within South Australia. I think I almost fell over when you sort of announced what the cost would be if we don't take the cyber threat seriously. And I suppose that also then goes to show why our cyber professionals are paid so well to make sure that we can stand up and be resilient against these threats. Again, I think the advice to check out the NICE framework seems like a really good start for anyone that's online listening today, just to really explore the various different opportunities that can be available. And as Paula, you mentioned your very diverse pathway into the industry too. So it really can start from anywhere. Moving on, I would like to introduce our next speaker. We have David Eyre, who's our Director of Maritime at Defence SA. Now, if there's anything we know about defence industry in South Australia, it's that shipbuilding is one of the driving forces of the industry. But there are so many facets to the sector and so many different types of career choices available. The sector is set to create jobs within our state across the next 30 years onwards. So good luck, David, in fitting your presentation into 8 minutes. Thank you, David.
Great. Can you hear me? Am I on? Fantastic. Thanks, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone. As Nikki said, my name is David Eyre and I'm the Director of Maritime at Defence SA. 8 minutes. Okay, let's see how we go. I'm going to keep this very brief. Penny, who's coming straight after me, will probably touch on a couple of the topics that I'm speaking about. And if you do have questions, Nikki's explained how you can do Q&A during this, but she'll explain a bit later on how you can do Q&A after this session, because I'm sure there'll be people with a lot of questions. So my journey, I'm going to tell you a very quick story on how I ended up running a shipyard of over 700 people building parts of the air warfare destroyer just before becoming the Director of Maritime at Defence SA. It's fair to say I wasn't a good student at secondary school, not because I wasn't capable, because I was bored and I was distracted at school. So I left when I was 16 years old. I went to the local TAFE where I learned how to do technical drawings, and I also learned how to weld, which was fantastic. This led to a job in a shipyard where I finished off my TAFE training and became a draftsman drawing parts for warships. After 10 years in the shipyard, I was lucky enough to get a job on the Collins class project, and I was sent to Sweden as part of that project for 3 years to learn how to draw and design the Collins class submarines, which are now operated by the Royal Australian Navy. Importantly, I continued my education throughout my career. I finally got my engineering degree at 40. I got my MBA at 50. And over the journey, I worked in the construction of almost every single naval vessel in this country. So the last job I had before joining government was running the Forjax shipyard in New South Wales. Here I led a team of over 700 shipyard workers building the superstructure for the air warfare destroyers. That's a project worth hundreds of millions of dollars and resulted in Australian ships that are as good as any warships built anywhere in the world. I'm very proud of that experience. I guess the key takeout of my story is that shipbuilding can give you those fantastic experiences. It can give you opportunities to travel, but can also give you a great sense of achievement in being part of a team that makes some of the most complex things on the planet. A number of people have said that in the past, that it's not how you start your career, and I believe this to be true, but it's about the journey and it's how you finish that's important. And hopefully I'm a good example of what that is. Now I've got a couple of slides just to run through with you around, let's see, where are we? Is it that one? Or is it that one? Let me have a look. Just to show you what sort of projects we have in South Australia. That doesn't look like it. I'll just go back a couple of slides. There we go, right back to the beginning. So first up, top of the page, the offshore patrol vessels. We are building 12 of these in Australia. These are substantial vessels, of which we are building 2 in South Australia right now. These are 80 meters long. They are steel ships. They have 40mm guns. You can land a helicopter on them. The picture is at the top of the page on the right-hand side. And these are being built right now in South Australia. There are some great supply chain companies in South Australia that are part of the build of these in South Australia. Penske MTU, who are based in Edinburgh, L3 and Saab, who are both based in Mawson Lakes, Taylor Brothers, who are based in Osborne, and another company, Noska Kaiser, who are doing the air conditioning systems based up in Salisbury. A very exciting project, and that project will continue for at least another 2 or 3 years. Directly under that, the guided missile frigates, or the Hunter class ships as we call these. These are designed in the UK. 9 vessels will be built in Adelaide over the next 20 years. These vessels will start in December of next year. And this is a huge ship. This is a 150 meters long steel vessel, and its primary role is anti-submarine warfare. They're equipped with torpedoes, guns, air defense, missiles, a whole range of weapon systems. They carry helicopters on board, and they're intended to have in the future a UAV capability as well. Their main role is anti-submarine warfare, and they're designed to be very quiet, both in the underwater shape of the hull, but also in sound dampening for its main machinery, engines and propellers. Again, this project starts at the end of next year in South Australia and will go for 20 years. Lastly, bottom of the page, the attack class submarines. So these are the French designed submarines. We'll be building 12 of these submarines all in South Australia, and that project will last 30 years. These are due to start construction in 2023. And if you compare them to the Collins class submarines we have now in the Australian Navy, they're about 80 metres long. The attack class will be closer to 100 metres. The new subs will have a longer range. They'll be able to stay at sea for much longer periods of time. And with automation, they will actually have a smaller crew than the current Collins class submarines. And it's not just ships and submarines we're building. We've also got a lot of infrastructure construction happening at the moment. We're currently building 2 state-of-the-art shipyards in South Australia, one of which is effectively complete and the other has only just started construction. So if you look at the graphic on the screen at the moment, you can see that the red square identifies ASC North. That's where the Collins class submarines were built and are currently undergoing their maintenance. The green square on the left of screen, that's ASC South. This is where the air warfare destroyers I referred to earlier were built. This is where the offshore patrol vessels, the 2 offshore patrol vessels are currently being built. And this is where the 9 Hunter class ships will be built in the future. The blue square on the back right there, this is currently a construction site. This is where the attack class submarines will be built starting from 2023. Now, I also have a very short video, a 2-minute video, just to show the ASC South site. And it gives you a really good understanding of what a shipyard looks like. So bear with me and we'll see how this goes.
The Naval Shipbuilding Plan 2017 set out involvement and contributing to a secure and prosperous future for our nation. The Australian Government is delivering on this commitment to build a strong, sustainable and innovative Australian naval shipbuilding industry. On behalf of the Government, Australian Naval Infrastructure Proprietary Limited will facilitate a substantial upgrade to infrastructure and facilities at the Osborne South Naval Shipyard in Adelaide, South Australia, to ensure the site has the right capacity and capability to support the continuous build of major surface combatants for many decades to come. The completed shipyard will be fit for purpose and, to the maximum extent possible, future-proofed to keep Australia's naval ships at the cutting edge of military capabilities. Deliberately flexible in nature, the Osborne South Naval Shipyard will incorporate advanced manufacturing capabilities capable of accommodating the potentially varying needs of future shipbuilders at the site. The upgrades will commence in the second half of 2017 and are expected to take around 2.5 years to implement, in time for the commencement of the Future Frigate program in 2020. The early investment of up to $535 million is an important step in improving shipyard productivity and reducing the cost of Australian build programs, and demonstrates the government's decisive actions to implement continuous shipbuilding.
So as you can see, a very impressive shipyard, and only one of 2 shipyards we'll have in South Australia. That one for building the Hunter class ships, and the new shipyard which will come online in a couple of years to build the attack class submarines. So when we look at jobs in shipyards, broadly there's 3 categories of jobs that are in demand right now and will be for a number of years to come. Firstly, the way I started out as a designer, and roles around mechanical systems, electrical, piping and structural mainly. So these are people that actually draw parts of the ship so they can be manufactured and put together by the production teams. They draw in 2D and 3D using computer-aided design, and are basically sitting in the office behind computers most of the day, but they do get out into the shipyard to see what's happening occasionally. So these are skills that can be studied as a certificate or diploma at TAFE, and Penny will talk about that a little bit more in the next session. Then there are roles in production. These are the professions that physically build the ships and submarines. They cut and shape steel plates, they weld them together, they install equipment, and they run the hundreds of kilometres of cables through the ships or submarines. Typically, these roles start as an apprentice, and you can talk to TAFE about the pathways into those sort of roles. And examples being heavy fabrication. So these are the teams that actually build the ship. So they shape the steel, they bend the steel, and they weld the steel together into the form of the hull and the decks. Mechanical operators are also in demand. These will be the teams that will be installing main engines, working on pumps and other mechanical systems. And then there's electrical operators. These teams will work on everything from lighting systems to combat systems. Then there are the engineering disciplines. These will again be in heavy demand over the next 5+ years. And these are the professions that actually design the systems, they review other people's designs, and they generally solve problems as the ship is being built. These professions need university qualifications, and the types of engineers that will be in demand will be mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, electronics, software, combat systems, and structural engineering. Again, these are the categories of jobs that the shipyards will be looking at now and into the near future. When you think about it, currently building ships out at Osborne, we have about 1,500 people. By the end of this decade, we need 6,000 people. So that's what the future in shipbuilding looks like in South Australia. So lastly, my advice for anyone thinking of a job in shipbuilding is to think about what you enjoy doing and then find a way to do that in shipbuilding. The profession is very broad. It covers a huge range of jobs and skills. And in most cases, if you can identify what you like to do, there'll be a job in a shipyard for you. You don't have to go to university. There are lots of in-demand roles requiring vocational qualifications. You don't need to join the Navy. You don't need to wear a uniform. So good luck. And how did I go, Nikki?
Yeah, thanks, David. That was fantastic. And yourself, another prime example of someone that's taken a very diverse pathway into the industry. So thank you for sharing that. One other point I'd like to highlight is you mentioned how it's important to keep learning. And I can't stress that enough. I think in any industry to keep learning and seizing opportunities, because in particular for the defence industry, there is, a lifelong career that you can enjoy if you are doing what you enjoy and pursue what you want to do. So thank you. And talking about learning, it sort of leads me on to my next speaker. I'll just start by saying that there are so many different study and training pathways for you to take to find your place in the defence industry. And for those of you who are in South Australia or considering a move, South Australia has 3 globally recognised universities, which are a great place to start when it comes to getting the qualifications you need for a successful career. If you're considering an apprenticeship or other training pathways, South Australia offers a number of subsidised programs. And this comprehensive list can be found on the Skilling South Australia website. So I recommend you take a look at that as well. Now, TAFE SA has been working to develop a range of industry-specific programs to support the types of skills needed in the defence industry now and which will be needed in future. We're going to hear more about these programs now from our final speaker, Penny Johnson, who is Director of Strategic Industry Partnerships at TAFE SA. Thank you, Penny.
Thanks, Nikki. Good evening, everyone. So I've been working on skills for naval shipbuilding with the defence prime contractors and with the universities and other government partners and the Naval Shipbuilding College here in South Australia for some time, going back to 2017. What I'd like to do is share a number of slides with you that illustrate some of the contextualised learning programs that we have, but I hope will give you a really good idea of some of the major in-demand skills. So what I've tried to illustrate here and what some of our kind of logos and publications are trying to illustrate is there's a really interesting mix of practical, hands-on skills plus a digital overlay with a lot of what's happening in naval shipbuilding. So naval shipbuilding historically has been very hands-on metal trade. That will continue, but all the tradespeople will need that additional overlay of digital knowledge, digital know-how in order to do their jobs properly. So you saw in the video that David showed kind of digital shipyard. There will be robotic elements to welding. So tradespeople will not only have to be high-class welders themselves, but also be able to program robotic welders. So it's that interesting mix. Also seeing a lot of virtual reality, digital twin type technology coming in, which we are looking to work with students to train them up in. So what we've done on the bottom left-hand side there, you can see we've created special computer-aided design files, and we've created something we're calling the capability frigate. So our computer-aided design students doing a diploma of engineering technical or some of the associate degrees in engineering will be able to go into the computer-aided design files of the frigate. We've got a ship's engine room example here. So they'll be able to design in a kind of contextualised environment to develop their computer-aided design skills. We've also created 3D scans of the Oberon submarine, which is in Sydney, in Darling Harbour, and kind of tag that with different aspects of what students will learn in their computer-aided design. What we've also got is we've contextualised our welding fabrication programs. So you can see on the bottom left there, there's a picture of our lecturers building some deck plates to simulate confined space welding situation. They've also worked with Huntington Ingalls US shipbuilders to build some of these training rigs. So we anticipate more and more we will have a lot of these learning aids, training rigs that mirror the sorts of situations that tradespeople and engineers are going to come across in shipyards. Also on the top left-hand side, we've got our Advanced Welder Training Centre. So we have 12 simulated welding setups that we've worked in partnership with Weld Australia to establish, and the South Australian Government. So what this does is give students an opportunity to practice, and the best welding comes from lots of practice, but they get instantaneous feedback around the proper kind of rates at which they're welding, the angles at which they're working, and the quality of the weld that they're producing. So this means when they get into the workshop, they do much better and have a lot more confidence with what they're doing. It also enables us to bring in maybe groups of non-traditional kinds of workers, like targeting girls in schools to look at welding, but also people who are interested in the engineering side, but actually want to get an understanding of what happens in production. So again, it's that physical plus the digital overlay that we're looking to help build these workers and skills of the future. Also got there an example of our Cyber Training Security Operations Centre, which we've established at our Adelaide campus. We're getting lots of graduates who are being employed in defence industry and also in the financial services sector in Adelaide. So we're not just building skills that are for the defence industry, they're also transferable skills from and to other industries. So it's that kind of flexibility and agility of skills that we're looking to build here. We've also established an Introduction to Naval Shipbuilding online course. This is in partnership with the Naval Shipbuilding College and the Department of Defence. So this course is available online to anyone across Australia. It's about probably 10 to 15 hour course online that can be done over a month. And for anyone who's interested in transitioning from engineering, from trades, from other backgrounds into defence industry, it will give you a really good sense of what the industry is about, different types of vessels, special ship terminology that not everyone is familiar with. Also the role of the Royal Australian Navy, because ultimately what we're all trying to do is support the Royal Australian Navy in building these quality vessels. So more information, we have a lot more information on our Defence Industries webpage. We have a number of infographics that detail a wide variety of job roles beyond computer-aided design and trades, but also into HR, procurement, workplace health and safety, ICT, network administration type job roles. At the Defence Industry webpage, you can explore the 3D submarine interior that we have of the Oberon submarine. And you can look at the infographics. You can also enrol in the Introduction to Naval Shipbuilding if you'd like to. If you want even more of a taster around Introduction to Naval Shipbuilding, the Naval Shipbuilding College does have a 30-minute free Naval Shipbuilding taster course, which is useful and give you some more information. And also the Defence SA Careers website is very helpful as well, with lots of good stories about how people got into the industry and how rewarding it's been. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Penny. That again, another very insightful session talking about the opportunities through a TAFE pathway. I think what I found really interesting is that those traditionally physical, trade, labour intensive roles are now crossing over into a bit more of a digital space. So in a way, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. So I think that was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Also, those infographics, having looked and reviewed them myself, they are a fantastic resource. And I definitely recommend those online today to head over to the TAFE site and view those, as well as the NSC. So that was another great resource that you highlighted there, Penny. I definitely suggest you heading over there, and if you are interested in shipbuilding, or perhaps maybe not so sure, the taster course would be a great first step for you to try out. So thank you. It now leads us on to the next part of our session with a Q&A. So I can see that some questions have been submitted already. Please think about anything that you would like to question our speakers at the moment and send them through. The Q&A button is just at the bottom of your window there. Simply click on it, type in your question, and we'll answer them live. Also through the chat function, you may have seen that there have been a number of resources being posted. So definitely suggest you check out the resources area there as well, just to follow up on some of the points that have been highlighted today. So I will go on to our first question. So this one was aimed for Darren. The question was, what sorts of jobs are there in the space industry? So perhaps, Darren, if you can highlight some of the key roles for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. And that is a great question, because it is a new sector, and it's actually hard to spell out a lot of the jobs because some of them haven't been created yet. I mentioned a lot of the technologies will be new. But in a recent study done in the UK for jobs most relevant to space, the #1 job that came up was software engineering, interestingly. So that's more on the processing side. But interestingly too, job skills 2, 3, 4, right through to 7 were more softer skills. So the ability to work in teams, the ability to run projects, so project management, the ability to sell business potential, so business development. So I mentioned that there's an ecosystem. So there's all the traditional jobs you might find in any industry, but specifically for space, I think software engineering, aerospace engineering, in terms of materials and building and designing rockets and other things that can go up into space. Engineering of all sorts is definitely applicable. And we also need the research aspects that come into it. So physics is critically important. We're dealing with a lot of electro-optical technology, so cameras making use of the spectrum, and that requires usually a physics background to make use of. And other areas like the science approaches that lead into things like communications. So laser communications is one area that we're looking at. Quantum communications in the future, so coupling photon pairs and looking at quantum mechanics is quite a very abstract high-end part of the field. But like I said, it's an ecosystem. We're looking for people in all of those sectors. So maybe, for example, take a lawyer who's been traditionally trained, but now you need to bring in some space skills to understand what space law is about. So moving across, and just like Penny mentioned with some of those other skill sets, moving across, taking your broad skill set, but then specializing in space is important too. I hope that answers that one.
Great, thank you, Darren. I suppose that this kind of leads on to a question from myself, in that the space sector seems to be evolving at quite a fast pace. And how well do you think that our education system can keep up with the training requirements for those that are interested in a career in the sector?
Yeah, it is evolving at a fast pace, and traditional schooling has found it difficult, especially to support the STEM requirements for all of our industries. We've mentioned cyber, maritime and defence, and all of those associated industries do require that STEM background. One of the things we're finding though with space is it's certainly attractive, and we're using that to motivate and gain interest in the space field. So I mentioned a school program we're going to develop. Just as an example, we're going to have people who are interested in the data side of things, accessing space satellite imagery and data. But we've also been working with a program where people are going to be involved in the communication side. So kids who want to actually get involved in communications. It's going to be difficult, but we do have a program to actually build those skills out through the school. And I think South Australia will actually be leading the nation and perhaps even the world in the future if we can make this work.
Great, thank you. Going on to our next question, this one is for Paula. Is there anywhere we can see the kinds of cyber jobs that are available, and also where I can find info about internships?
Yeah, great question, Nikki. And I get asked this quite a lot, engaging with a lot of students in our sort of state. So there's a really great tool actually that's been built recently, which is called cyberseek.com.au. I'll put a link to that in the chat channel after this, but that has a really great resource. It's got an interactive map, which shows a heat map of the cybersecurity supply and demand in country. It also has a really interactive career pathway tool in there. So it shows you sort of common roles within cybersecurity, and how you can transition between different opportunities within them. And it also has a certifications and skills guide, which is interactive as well. So similar to the dashboard that AusCyber has, which I mentioned before, this one looks at certification pathways, common roles in cyber, and credentials that are commonly required for them. I would advise, if you're actively looking for a job in cybersecurity, to use seek.com.au as well in its normal capacity, and just set up those searches and have notifications set up for cybersecurity roles that come up. In terms of internships, there is actually a variety of different internships, work experience placements and so on that come up through various organisations, through your big corporates right through to your smaller businesses. But there is a really great site called augradconnection.com and /internships, and that has, you can specialise which state or territory you want to look at, and you can specialise the category into IT/cybersecurity, and it will pull together everything that's advertised currently at the moment. So I'll share those links into the chat channel, and hopefully that will be useful.
Great, thanks, Paula. The next question is for David. Can you please let us know if there is potential to move around within different roles in the shipbuilding industry? If someone's not sure exactly of the role that they want to pursue.
No, certainly, Nikki. I mean, it's not unusual in shipbuilding for people to move around in different professions. I mean, some of the best planners in the shipyard have generally been people that have been working on the shop floor, and they've gone from maybe 5 or 10 years working in that space as a welder, a boilermaker, an electrician, a pipe fitter, and moved into the planning role in the office. And they have that knowledge that they can take with them. Some of our logistics people were working, setting up equipment or working on trials. And the continual learning aspect that I referred to is very strong in the shipyards. And the primes, the BAEs of the world and the naval groups and the ASCs, these big companies really promote that continual learning. So you can actually develop your project management skills while you're in the shipyard working in one role, and then potentially move into another role within the yard itself. And while we talk about 30 years of shipbuilding, you don't have to stay 30 years in one company. I mean, we're lucky that we've got 3 major projects here, and it's not unusual that you might work on submarines for 5 or 10 years, and then you want to work on ships for 5 or 10 years. So moving across from one project to another is fairly easy. And there's also a huge supply chain. I mentioned a whole bunch of companies earlier like Saab and Taylor Brothers and Noska Kaiser. I mean, they're looking for skilled people as well. So after working for a few years in a shipyard, you might want to work in a smaller company or do something more niche. And I guess my final point is that a lot of these companies that are building ships in South Australia are global companies. So there are opportunities within other divisions within those organisations and even with the same company overseas. So the opportunity to move around and do different roles in 30 years of shipbuilding, lots and lots of opportunities without a doubt.
That's great. Thank you, David. We do have another question. It looks there's a question relating to TAFE. So how do TAFEs help place students into jobs? Penny, is that something that you're able to answer?
Yes, Nikki, it is. I've also typed the answer there. So we've got very strong links with the defence prime contractors. So it's their knowledge and validation that we've used to colour our learning programs. So we know there's a good alignment. We regularly have industry in to talk to students. A lot of our students are also have been employed as apprentices or trainees and then referred to our course. So sometimes it's the other way around, that the employers actually knows that the course will meet the need and refers their apprentice or trainee. We call it the Naval Shipbuilding Enterprise. So we're all collaborating together to ensure that the available workforce is there.
Great, thank you. It does bring us to time, so I think we've pretty nailed that one on the head. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and a big, huge thanks to our guest speakers for sharing their knowledge, insights and expertise. Someone did ask whether a recording of this session is going to be available, and the answer is yes. You will find this recording on the Explore Careers website, and we will be posting the video through our Defence SA channels. If you wanted to email us directly for a copy, you can do so through inquiries@defencesa.com. If you know someone who might benefit from the information that has been shared today, please do share. You will also find more information about defence industry opportunities at findyourplacesa.com, as well as some excellent career stories and further resources. If you have a question that we haven't answered for you today, you can ask it through the contact form that is on the Find Your Place SA website, and we will definitely come back to you with more information. So in closing, I'd like to wish you all the best with your studies and hope you now have a clear roadmap to help find your place within the defence industry. Thank you.